Hey, and welcome back. How's the training going on? Have you made any progress? Are you facing any issues? Or do you have any feedback for me? If yes, feel free to email me on support@tamexcel.com and I will get back to you within 48 hours. Right, in today's video, we will learn about variables and constants. In VBA, like any programming language, variables and constants are names that represent values. So in today's video, we will not only learn about variable and constants, but we'll also learn what are data types. How do we choose data types when we are declaring variable and constants? So let's begin. In a computer, data is stored in the computer's memory. To access this data, you need to specify a name associated with that value. Depending upon the type of data you are storing, these can be variables or objects. We will work with objects in another video. In this video, we will try and understand what are variables. Variables are used in almost all computer programs, and it makes our life easier when we code. As far as the naming convention goes, you have to follow certain rules when you are naming a variable. For example, the first character has to be an alphabet. You can't embed a space, period, exclamation mark, or special characters like @ ampersand, $, hash in the name. You can, however, use an underscore. For example, get underscore cost. The name can't exceed 255 characters in length. VBA has certain reserved keywords. You cannot use these reserved keywords as the name of a variable. I personally use a name which just by looking at it tells me what the variable holds. The names are case insensitive, so I use a mix of lowercase and uppercase characters. Makes it much easier to read. As I mentioned earlier, you can use an underscore. You can use get underscore cost or simply get cost with G and C capitalized. Both are acceptable. Let's launch the Visual Basic Editor. If you're not familiar with the Visual Basic Editor, then I highly recommend watching the video called Visual Basic Editor and Introduction. Let's quickly launch the Visual Basic Editor by pressing the shortcut key Alt F11. And let's insert a module by right-clicking on the VBA project and then clicking on Insert Module. In this module, I'm going to demonstrate how to assign a value to a variable. Let's create a sample procedure. So I'll call it sub-sample and I'll press the Enter key. To assign a value to a variable, simply write the variable name followed by an equal to sign and then the value. Let's take a couple of examples. Username is equal to John Doe. Password equal to magic word. Employee ID is equal to 100001. Eligible for promotion is equal to true. Today's date is equal to hash 22032022 hash. Depending on the type, the values will be assigned to the variable accordingly. For example, should we pass the value in quotes, as I've done it here, or should I pad it with the hash sign? We will cover this later in the video when we talk about data types. The next thing we will cover is how and why to declare a variable. To declare a variable, simply use the syntax. I'll just make some space here. Dim variable name as data type. So this is the syntax. We need to use the dim keyword to declare a variable. There are two sections while declaring a variable. The first is the variable name which is this, and the second is a data type. Before we get into the data type, let's first understand why is it necessary to declare a variable. Declaring variables make our life easier when we code. Maintaining the code also becomes easy. If there is a change that needs to be made, then it has to be done only in one place. Let's take an example. What I'm going to do is I am going to comment this code. I may use this later on. Let's create another sub called sub sample. And then I'll declare my first variable as dim fruit as string. The next one is dim fruit cost as double. My third variable is quantity as double. And my last variable is dim total fruit cost as double. Now let's assign few values. Fruit is equal to apple. Fruit cost is equal to 15. Quantity is equal to 5. So total fruit cost will be total fruit cost is equal to fruit cost multiplied by quantity. Now let's show the total fruit cost in a message box, which is MSG box. The current rate of ampersand fruit ampersand is ampersand fruit cost ampersand and the total cost of ampersand fruit ampersand is ampersand total fruit cost, and we are done. Here the apple is stored in a variable fruit, and the fruit variable is used in two places. Imagine we did not have a variable and we were using the word apple in this sentence, and it was, let's say, used more than 10 times. In this example, we are using apple. What if I want to use grapes now? So what would you prefer? Would you prefer to make that change in all those 10 places or simply at one place? Obviously, you would like to make the change only at one place. I would personally never want to change it at all those 10 places. So this way, maintaining the code becomes very easy. Now let's understand more about data types. A data type specifies which type of value a variable has and what type of mathematical relation or logical operations can be applied to it. Variables can be declared as one of the following data types: Boolean, byte, integer, long, currency, single, double, date, string for variable length strings, strings for fixed length strings, or variant. If you do not specify a data type, the variant data type is assigned by default. You can also create a user-defined type by using the type statement. We will cover type statement in a different video. VBA data types can be segregated into two types: numeric data types and non-numeric data types. I've put together a small table in an image to explain more about these two data types. So let me quickly insert the image. Now let's minimize the ribbon so that we can get more space. As we can see in the table, we can have numeric data types and non-numeric data types. Under numeric data types, we have byte, integer, long, single, double, currency, and decimal. In the second column, we have storage, which shows how much storage does a byte, integer, and other data types take. In the third column, we have range of values. So a byte can store from 0 to 255, integer can store from minus 32,768 to 32,767. Similarly for other data types. No one expects you to remember these huge values, but if you do, that's simply awesome. I personally don't remember these huge values. You should have a fair idea how much the commonly used variables can store. For example, if you want to store a value 60,000, let's say, you cannot use an integer data type, because if you try to store 60,000 into an integer data type, you will get an overflow error. The maximum value an integer data type can take is 32,767. So for that, you will use a long data type. Below is the non-numeric data types. It can have string of fixed length or variable length, a boolean data type, a date data type, an object, and so on. The second column is the bytes used by this data type, and in the third column you have the range of values. A string of fixed length can have a max of 65,400 characters, and so on. As I mentioned earlier, if the data type is not specified, it will automatically declare the variable as variant. Now let's go back and declare our variables accordingly. So let's quickly go back. I'm going to delete this code. We don't need this anymore. And I'm going to uncomment this. And I'm going to now declare these variables. Anything within the double quote is a string. So username should be of string data type. So I will declare it as dim username as string. Similarly, password is a string. So I'll copy this variable and declare it as dim password as string. The next one is employee ID, which is storing a number. So can it be an integer? No, it cannot be an integer, so it has to be a long. So I will declare this as dim employee ID as long. By default, I would recommend declaring the numeric data types as long and not as integer, especially when you are working with Excel rows, because there are 1048576 rows in Microsoft Excel worksheet, and if you have to loop through these rows, you will need a long data type. So like I said, get into the habit of using the long data type instead of an integer data type. Right, the next one is eligible for promotion, which is a true false. True false means it's a boolean data type. So I declare this as boolean. And the last one is date. So I declare this as date. So with these examples, I hope we have enough clarity about data types. Now let's move on to constants. Let me delete all of this. Constant is like a variable, but you cannot modify it. To declare VBA constants, you can use the keyword const, C-O-N-S-T. Since you already know the value of a constant, they can be declared as one of these data types. There are two types of constants, built-in constants and user-defined constants. You cannot set the value of a built-in constant. It is already predefined. For example, the pi function. So if I write MSG box application dot worksheet function dot pi, this is a constant. So if you run this, you will get 3.14159. So this is the value of pi, which is a constant. You cannot set the value of pi manually. In a user-defined constant, you can set the value of the constant in design time. And once the value is set, you cannot change it at runtime. Let's take an example to understand it. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to declare a constant variable called tax rate. As I mentioned earlier, to declare a constant, you have to declare it using the keyword const. Let's call it tax rate. And I will specify the data type as double. When declaring a constant, you set the value in the same line. Unlike the variable where you declare the variable in a line and then assign a value to it in another line, you can assign the value to a constant in the same line. Next, we will declare a variable called dim subcost as double. We'll take one more variable, which is dim total cost as double. And let's assign values to it. So let's say subcost is 15. And we will calculate total cost as subcost plus subcost multiplied by tax rate. And we will use a message box to display the total cost. Now let's run this procedure by clicking on the Run Sub User Form button. You can alternatively press F5 and we get 17.7. As I mentioned earlier, the value of a variable can be changed at runtime, but you cannot change the value of a constant at runtime. If you try to do that, see what happens. First, I'm going to change the value of subcost. I'll make it, let's say, 20. And if I run this, it works. But if I change the value of tax rate to 0.20, which is 20%, see what happens. You get an assignment to constant not permitted. So you cannot change the value of a constant at runtime. So I'm going to delete this. Depending on the scope of the variable can be declared at procedure level or at module level or at application level. I will be talking more about the scope of the variable in my next video, which is understanding scope and visibility. If you're interested in knowing more about it, and if you still have not subscribed to this channel, go ahead and subscribe to this channel by clicking on the bell icon. You can declare the variable in separate lines like I did, or you can declare them in one line. So if I go back and take the same old example, dim user name as string, dim password as string, dim employee ID as long, dim eligible for promotion as boolean, dim today's date as date. So you can declare these variables in separate lines. Or if you want, you can also club them based on the same data type. So I can set dim username as string, comma, password as string. I can set dim employee ID as long, then I can add more, I as long, J as long. Similarly, eligibility for promotion as boolean, comma, visibility as boolean. Similarly, today's date as date, yesterday's date as date. So this is the second way of declaring a variable. You will also see people use a third way, which is a modified version of way 1, where you have every variables in separate line. And one moment, I'll quickly put every variable in a separate line. So you arrange data types based upon the data type of the longest variable. Here, so you put your cursor before as and you press tab once. And then you press tab for the rest of the data types. like this. So what happens is everything is arranged based upon the data type of the longest variable. So this is another style of declaring your variable. So I've shown you 3 different ways. Pick whatever style you want, or if you have a different style, follow that. It doesn't really matter. A quick reminder, unlike some programming languages like VB.NET, if you do not specify the data type, then it will be declared as variant. So if I remove this space for a moment and I bring this variable on top and I declare a third variable as string, for example, name of person as string. So we have 3 string variables. Now if I delete this and this, so we have dim username, password, name of person as string. In VB.NET, all 3 of them will be declared as string. But in VBA, only the last one will be declared as string and the first 2 will be declared as variant. One should avoid using variants as data types unless it is absolutely necessary. The 2 main reasons for this are, first, the variant data type in VBA requires more memory than any of the other data types. Second, VBA constantly checks the variant data type and then tries to assign it to a relevant data type. This makes the code slow. In case of explicit data type, VBA doesn't need to check. From memory management perspective, it's better to declare the variable as a specific data type. Having said that, there are benefits of using a variant data type as well, especially when you are not sure what the outcome of an operation is. You can use a variant data type. Let's take an example. So I'm going to delete this and then I will say dim red and I press enter. Here I am not specifying what data type is the variable red. Red equal to application dot get open file name start parenthesis. I'll quickly explain in a moment what am I doing. Just let me quickly type this code. And then I will display the result by typing debug.print red. So in this code, what we are trying to do is browse for a text file. Now, depending upon the user action, 2 things can happen. First, the user selects a file, or second, the user cancels the process. So let's test it. So I'm going to click on the run sub user form and then select a file. That's the first option. And you will notice that I get the file name and the full path, which is of string type. Now I'm going to run it again and this time I press cancel. You will notice I get false, which is a boolean type. If we would have declared dim red as boolean, then we would have got a type mismatch error when the user selected a file. Let's test this. So I run this, I select a file and I say OK, and I get a type mismatch error. When I click on debug, it takes me to this line because it is expecting a boolean value, but what we are passing is a string value and hence the error. So when declaring variables, choose the data type judiciously. Time for a quick recap. In this video, we not only learned about variables and constants, but we also learned about data types and how to choose them when declaring a variable or a constant. If you still have any questions, feel free to email me on support@tamexcel.com and I will get back to you within the next 48 hours. Just a quick reminder, I will be posting 2 videos every week, one on Monday and the other on Thursday. If you like the way I explain things, or if you think I can assist you in your quest for learning Visual Basic Programming from scratch, then go ahead, drop a few likes and subscribe to this channel by clicking on the bell icon. And I'll see you on Monday when I speak to you about understanding scope and visibly.